Canal Street Chronicles writer Dylan Sanders joins to talk about replacing a Hall of Fame quarterback and our top 3 players to watch heading into New Orleans Saints training camp, all on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On today's episode, we're going to hit the pause button for a day on the position-by-position previews. Going to push wide receiver over to next week because today we're joined by a very special guest. My very, very good friend, Dylan Sanders of Canal Street Chronicles, is here to talk about an excellent piece that he wrote over at CSC, talking about replacing Hall of Fame quarterbacks over the course of recent history. What worked, what didn't, and where does it all factor in for the New Orleans Saints? We also choose our top 3 players that we're most excited to see at New Orleans Saints training camp. As always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, co-managing editor over at CanalStreetChronicles.com, and your Tuesday co-host over the National Locked On NFL podcast. We got all of that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints, your team every day. All right, everybody, get started with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget to go and also check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show as well for everything going on around the NFL, wherever you get your podcast. But today, as always, we're focused on the New Orleans Saints here on Locked On Saints. And I'm joined today by a very, very special guest. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube or you just heard him wave over on the podcast side, I think that's how it works. We're joined by my good friend, Dylan Sanders, my co-host over at our FPC Daily Show, 5 p.m. Eastern time every day, over at Full Press Coverage, Full Press Radio, Dylan and Ross Save Sports. You can also catch all of his work over at Canal Street Chronicles, and he's the TikTok guru for New Orleans.football, the one and only Nick Underhill. Dylan Sanders, at Dilly Sanders on Twitter. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Ross. You know, it's I love it. I love being here on June 24th, 2021, recording this episode. The day
yes,
that people are hearing it.
On June 24th. You know how we roll.
Specifically.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here, man. Always a pleasure to talk with you. I'm always grateful we get to do it every day, but not always here with Locked On Saints. We're going to be changing that, though, because I'm going to bring you through quite a bit here over the offseason.
I wore this. I thought I was talking to Matt Moscona today, so I wore the LSU polo.
So you thought you were coming to Locked On LSU. Matt and I do it all the time. Bait and switch. We look a little similar, so people always get us confused. But Dylan's coming through today because he wrote a fantastic piece over at CanalStreetChronicles.com talking about replacing Hall of Fame quarterbacks, the history of quarterbacks and teams that have had to do it in the past, and now the New Orleans Saints looking to do it here in 2021. So Dylan, let's start there, and then we'll get to our top 3 Thursday segments where we're going to talk about the players that we're most excited to see at training camp. What's the bottom line here? What's the big takeaway that you want everybody to take away from your article about trying to replace or find success after replacing a Hall of Fame quarterback?
No, listen, doing this research was not the happiest or
Sure.
the most light work that I've done, because I realized not a lot of teams find immediate success after losing a Hall of Fame quarterback, and that only makes sense, right?
Yes.
You've had a great quarterback for the last 20 years. Most teams are not the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers. And you know what? The thing about the Green Bay Packers is they also didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
The first year that Aaron Rodgers took over.
Yeah.
So my bottom line is to level expectations for this team. And like I said, I mentioned in the article, not every situation is the same, but here we see 7 straight teams lose their longtime starting Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks, and immediately none of them had a winning season the next year.
Yeah. So it's not a great look, but at what you're saying basically is like, hey, maybe the expectations should be a little bit low, and understanding if the result isn't a 10-win, 11-win playoff season.
Yeah, and in looking through the team, I didn't just look at the quarterback position. I looked at the rest of the team. The Saints have a better roster than most of these teams did.
Where are some of those places in particular where you see the Saints maybe being in a better situation?
Maybe I'd say we have a better defense than Tom Brady left the New England Patriots with.
Sure. Yeah, especially with all the opt-outs over there, too, in that 2020 season.
A better overall team than Eli Manning left the New York Giants with.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts had a lot of turnover that year.
Now, the Colts were an interesting one because they were kind of the outlier for you, right, in terms of the research that you did.
They were a weird team because Manning's last year was 2011, but he didn't play that year for them.
Right.
He got hurt, so they got to immediately had that season where they did bad, and then they drafted Andrew Luck.
Right, and not every team goes from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck.
And Andrew Luck, actually, I was wrong a second ago. The Andrew Luck's first year, they finished 11-5.
But that was them. Suck for luck was the whole thing, right? They had the first round pick immediately after that. They didn't go directly from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. There was a losing season essentially in between.
Yes, technically. Yeah, technically they did, but But to be fair to them, they didn't have the chance to replace Peyton Manning because he got the surgery before, right before the preseason started. That knocked him out for that year, and then they left, and they got Andrew Luck, and then they were set from there. And also, they were an outlier because the Saints did not draft Andrew Luck.
Right. Yeah, but they do go to a number 1 overall selection potentially in Jameis Winston, so there's that. But we've also seen Jameis Winston for 5 seasons now, 6 if you include the little bit that we got to see him last year. Do you feel more confident in the Saints quarterback situation than some of these other situations that you looked at?
I saw a lot of scary similarities to a lot of these situations. The one that really scares me in particular is the Dallas Cowboys after Troy Aikman. They left they left the year, the year going into after Troy Aikman left, they had a quarterback carousel. Essentially, they didn't know who their starter was. They had brought in veterans to compete with their young guys that they had drafted and been trying to develop. And none of them really worked out. They didn't find success until about 6 years later, whenever they brought in undrafted free agent Tony Romo.
I think I've heard of Tony Romo before.
And the thing about Tony Romo is we could look at Taysom Hill in this situation, Ross, because the one I didn't mention this in the article, but Tony Romo, I don't think most people notice or think about this. He was on the Cowboys roster for 3 years before he took over.
Right.
He was able to he was developing behind the quarterback carousel. He didn't take over for 2 or 3 years until after he got signed by them as an undrafted free agent, and then it worked out.
Yeah, and Sean Payton was a part of that development too for Tony Romo, which is something to also consider. So let's say that you look at the 2021 season, right? Let's say we get to the end of the 2021 season. The Saints are, let's say, 10-7, right? 17-game season. What went right for the Saints to buck the trend?
They really everyone has been freaking out about this cap situation. They didn't really lose that much.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Emmanuel Sanders on offense.
Sure.
But the hope is that one of your bigger armed quarterbacks than Drew Brees will be able to unlock that Emmanuel Sanders in a Deontay Harris or a Marquez Callaway or a Traquan Smith.
Sure.
So they're better off. They have an amazing offensive line, and then an amazing running back in Alvin Kamara. So they have talent around surrounding of that most of these other teams didn't have.
Absolutely. So, all right, so we'll see exactly how it works out. I have the Saints being a double-digit win team this year. I think that they can do it. I think, though, that it comes down to picking and sticking with a quarterback. No changes or anything mid-season, or, if one of them struggling, stick with them and then sort of go the loyalty to the quarterback route, I think would benefit them as opposed to any kind of, 3-game in change type of situations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I would almost bet on it, Ross.
Oh, would you bet on it?
Uh-huh.
Well, I have a great place for you to be able to do that, Dylan, because in a moment we're going to be talking about our top 3. Thursday, we're going to each pick 3 players that we're looking forward to. But if Dylan wants to bet on the New Orleans Saints, you could do that, where, Dylan? Over at BetOnline.ag.
Ah,
Isn't
I
that
can't
a great
wait.
spot?
I'm going there right now.
Go over to BetOnline.ag. You could bet on futures right now. You could bet on, win totals for teams right now. And they also have some game of the year lines already up that you can bet on as well. Yeah.
That's
Sound
so
this.
cool.
You all of it. So you can check it out over at betonline.ag. And of course, Dylan, we're big time NBA fans as well. So you have the Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals, the futures right now. Milwaukee favorite to win the NBA championship as well. So you can go ahead and check that out and much more over at betonline.ag. It's free to sign up, and you can go ahead and use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Who Dat Nation, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Once again, joined by Dylan Sanders at Daily Sanders on Twitter, one of our writers and our social media expert over at Canal Chronicles. And of course, he's also the TikTok guru for New Orleans .football as well, and has much, much more on the way. And of course, co-host of Dylan and Ross Save Sports, our FPC radio show, which you can catch every day at 5 p.m. Eastern time over on the Full Press Coverage app or fullpressradio.com. Dylan, every Thursday here on the show, I do Top 3 Thursday. I pick a topic and I do the top 3 of that topic. Today, we decided we're going to do this one together, but we're going to go about it a little bit differently than we usually would, as opposed to doing just 3 each. So we'll do it sort of like we do over on the radio show all the time, to where we'll actually go draft style. So you're going to pick 3. I'm going to pick 3. You get the first pick. We're talking about the 3 players that we are most looking forward to seeing in training camp. It could be for good reasons. It could be because they're coming back from injury. It could be because we expect them to be a breakout, whatever it might be. Let's start off. You get the first overall selection here. Which first player are you taking that you're excited to see at New Orleans Saints training camp?
Ross, I feel like I hate going the obvious route, but I feel like there's one obvious situation that we really, everybody, we've all been talking about it. It's a real competition. I'm going to go ahead and draft Nolan Cooney.
I knew it.
Out of Syracuse, because I cannot wait for this punter battle, Ross.
You have to love a punter battle, right?
I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and we thought we were going to get one last year. Blake Gillikin coming in as an undrafted free agent with Thomas Morstead. Blake Gillikin went to injured reserve. Now it's between the formerly mulleted Penn State punter, now going up against the Syracuse punter. It's getting rid of the mullet. You were done with it at that point.
Ross, do you know how many times Nolan Cooney punted last year?
74? 76?
73, I believe.
73. Jeez.
Which is
ridiculous.
About 20 more than the second place punter.
That's ridiculous. That's how bad that Syracuse offense was.
You should feel bad, Syracuse.
And I think it was 20 plus were within the opponent's 20-yard line. I think he only had a pair of touchbacks as well. Like, he was incredible last year.
I have it right here, Ross. Nolan Cooney last year, he punted 74 times in 2020 for a 44.8 yard average. He had 25 punts over 50 yards and 24 downed within the 20 and only 3 touchbacks.
3 touchbacks. There you go. So, I mean, he was incredible. Really, really, really good. All right. So you went the punter battle. I'm going to go to another player here, a big name, another obvious one, or an actual obvious one for me in this one. I'm going to go with wide receiver Michael Thomas. I can't not talk about the fact that he's coming off of a season to where he dealt with a bunch of injuries, just over 500 receiving yards, only 1 touchdown in that season, has yet to put together a season where he has double-digit touchdowns. And now all of a sudden he gets to be in, a part of this offense that could potentially open up a little bit more vertically, expand a bit downfield, and we'll see exactly how it is that he fits into that and how his role potentially changes, whether it's with Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. I think, a little bit more of the downfield play ends up opening up for him, as the offense that was compressed and compacted last year could potentially expand a little bit going into 2021. I still contend that it's going to be mostly conservative, but you'll see a few more of those 7-step drops, extra blocker back there looking to take a shot downfield. I think Michael Thomas might get an opportunity to take advantage of that, and I think he's looking forward to showcasing that, and we'll get to start to see it as early as training camp begins for New Orleans.
Okay. I'm going with my second one now.
Mm-hmm.
This one is going to be obvious. Someone I obviously am interested in, Ross, that but I'm excited to see Adam Troutman this offseason. He had his first NFL season. I'm really excited to see how he looks and what he looks like. He's been training with a bunch of other tight ends. He was training now, Ross. He's recently with Jameis Winston. I'm excited to see what that's looked like. and what his route running is, because that's what a lot of Saints players who have worked out with him this offseason alone have said. It's crazy how he's running these routes and how hard he's running for a tight end.
Yeah. He's been, I mean, look, you talk about somebody who had just over 100 receiving yards last year, but you have every reason to be excited about him, right? I mean, putting too much expectation on him is one thing, but being excited about him to me is entirely different. And I think that there's a lot of reason to be excited during camp. I think he could be one of those guys, like we always talk about the wide receivers that end up jumping out and being the standouts in camp. I think that Adam Troutman could be one of those guys that garners a ton of attention in terms of the replays, the video sharing, the retweets, all of that stuff, the big catches. I think we could see him be one of those guys too in camp.
I'll never pass up a chance to mention my favorite Adam Troutman camp video is him mossing Jeremy Chin at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. Well, I remember, was that the last time? No, it was not the last time that you were on the show, but you came on after you went to the Senior Bowl 2 years ago and you said, watch out for this guy, Adam Troutman, specifically because you got to see him in those one-on-ones. You got to see him in that practice environment, which is now, by the way, sponsored by Walk-Ons, which is pretty cool, or presented by Walk-Ons, which is pretty cool. You pointed him out for a while ago.
I've been high on Adam Troutman for a while, and I'm still am. I'm really excited to see this offseason.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. All right, so we're going to get to the other three selections here, but we talked about Nolan Cooney, we talked about Michael Thomas, we talked a bit about Adam Troutman. Are you excited to see Michael Thomas once he gets back to camp here?
Yeah, I am. I want to see. I think he'll be fine, but I just want to see what he's been doing because he's one of the only people we haven't seen working out with the quarterback. So I'm really excited to see what he's been doing, what he looks like, and how he looks running.
Yeah. And it's coming back from a high ankle sprain in particular, and I'm sure that ended up turning into other issues when he got to the point where he shut himself down for the season. So I think that when you deal with that, that's something that lasts quite a while. So I think him taking his time to kind of get better over the course of the offseason, potentially focus on, I don't want to say rehabilitation, but focus on healing up at least getting into the 2021 season, I think was wise on his part.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Maximizing his opportunity to be able to come back and be a big part of this offense in 2021. That's certainly going to need him, right? I mean, we saw that the offense could still kind of accumulate a little bit last year, but you also had the Hall of Fame quarterback that we were talking about in the first segment with Drew Brees, that you still had that as a part of your offense. You don't this year, and you're going to either somebody that's got 4 starts or somebody that hasn't started a game since 2019, and both of these guys have a lot of question marks. It's not that either of them are impossible or that it is impossible that either one of them could be starting quarterbacks for the team, but having a weapon like Michael Thomas certainly helps you in that department.
Yeah, he's going to be the biggest. I think he's the biggest part of this season, without a doubt. So we need him to be good for regular season week 1, especially with a shortened preseason. Not that he would be playing at all in week 4 anyway.
Right.
But still, that is still a week of practice that we're missing out on before the season starts, Ross.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting, too, because you go through training camp, then you get preseason games 1, 2, and 3, and then there's a full week off before the week 1 matchup actually comes through. So there's a bit of a rest period in between. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to these next 3, Ross. But for now, we've built this. We've built these teams so far. I'm excited to see what happens. We've kind of set the bar. Some could say we've built the bar, Ross. And man, my taste buds, my mouth is watering for some reason, Ross. Why would that be?
I have a feeling that the reason why your mouth is watering is because you said the words Built Bar. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars on the market. They're protein bars that taste like candy bars. They're incredible. 9 different flavors. Dylan, you tried some of these at the Senior Bowl.
Oh, they're all delicious. I
brought a whole box of them.
Every single one I've tried has been amazing.
Do you remember? Do you have a favorite flavor?
It was one of the chocolate coconut ones. It was new.
Yeah. The chocolate brownie chunk one, or coconut brownie chunk one, I think is what it was.
Coconut and chocolate are 2 of my favorite flavors.
There you go. And there's actually 3 of those flavors. So you have the coconut brownie chunk, which is a limited time flavor that ends up continuously coming back because it's a top seller. But you also have a coconut and a coconut almond that tastes just like Almond Joy, which I absolutely love. Covered in 100% chocolate. You got the cosign here from Dylan. They taste fantastic, but they're also only 4 or 5 grams of sugar, 17, 18 grams of protein. So high in protein, high in fiber, low in calories, low in carbs, low in sugar. they're great for you. So go and check them out over at BuiltBar.com. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 to get 15% off. That's 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. We are wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints, joined by Dylan Sanders at Dilly Sanders on Twitter. And Dylan, we were going through our top 3 players that we're most excited about when it comes to training camp right around the corner, just a little bit over a month away, with the universal reporting date being on July 27th. Here we are on June 24th. So just a little bit away from this. We talked about Nolan Cooney, who I think has been my favorite selection so far, wide receiver Michael Thomas, and tight end Adam Troutman. Now it's my turn, as we're going through this draft style, to take a look at a couple of these other players. So for my second selection, I'm going to go with defensive tackle David Onyemata. Let me actually rephrase that. I'm going to go with defensive tackle Shy Tuttle. That's actually a little bit more interesting to me. Not that I think David Onyemata takes one more step forward, and he's in conversation for being in the, I would say, tier 1 of defensive tackles, understanding that Aaron Donald is in his own tier above that, right? Like there's Aaron Donald, and then there's tier 1, tier 2.
I don't think you can even put him in the tier of a position. Aaron Donald has his own position.
Yeah. Football player, best football player in the NFL, like hands down. So I think that David Onyemata can play himself up there. But when it comes to what's going to be most intriguing to me, I want to know who's going to be lining up next to David Onyemata. So I'm really interested to see the continued growth of a guy like Shy Tuttle, who has landed on the map big time. He had the big interception. He stiff-armed, Matt Ryan back to the sunken place. It was just incredible, like that moment. But you have this guy who's also like consistently generated pressure. He's consistently been somebody that's made plays. He's made good stops in the run game. So he has shown to be a little bit all around, if you will. So I'm excited to see him in camp continue to develop and take steps forward, particularly with some more competition around.
Yeah, Shy Tuttle, I'm just really excited to see what the Saints do with these defensive linemen, because they have a couple, and they have a couple really interesting ones. That's really just what I'm excited for that competition. I'm excited for all the competitions, Ross.
There's a lot of competition in this. It's so interesting too, right? Because you're not used to seeing that with New Orleans. You're used to seeing the competitions be like the fullback position, the third tight end position, and the fourth cornerback spot. You know what I mean? You're not used to seeing these like spots where people get to compete as starters.
And to round out my 3, Ross, if there's one thing people know about me is I love my blue bloods.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've taken Nolan Cooney. I've taken Adam Troutman.
Right.
Syracuse in Ohio. Not Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to round out with another blue blood. I'm going to go Lawrence Woods out of Truman State.
Okay.
One of the most exciting players for me, Ross. We've watched, we're good friends because we've watched punt coverage tape together.
Locked On special teams, baby. It's all about it. We're all about it here.
I love me some special teams. And I'm excited he's one of the most excited I am to see as an undrafted free agent in these camps, because I think he has a great chance to make the roster because of how he performs in camp.
Yeah.
I've never seen a team game plan for a specific gunner before, and teams had to start doing that for him over at Truman State.
Yeah. Truman State in Chicago, Illinois. I'm doing a big feature on him when we talking to his coach, his defensive coordinator, stuff like that. So we'll continue to talk about Lawrence Woods here over the offseason. But man, look, I have some numbers on him. 5'9", 182 pounds. Only only quote unquote, as we talk about it now, 4.5 speed, right? Because anything below 4.4, we kind of say only nowadays. But he was a 2018 Special Teams Player of the Year for his conference, had 4 kickoff return touchdowns, 50.7 yards per return over 12 kick returns in that season. He has the school's 8th best all-time kick return total with 609 yards. That includes him missing a large portion of the 2020 season and having an ACL injury. 2-time Special Teams Player of the Year award as well in 2018. So he really racked up the accolades and put some big time numbers on paper.
And you know what I love, Ross? Gunners.
What you love? Love gunners. Terry McLaurin. Remember, the idea for Terry McLaurin was that, he'll be a fantastic special teamer. And then he turned into Scary Terry, or continued to be Scary Terry, rather. All right, Dylan, I'm going to give my final selection here. This one should probably come as absolutely no shock to anybody that has been listening to the podcast or has followed me on Twitter since the beginning of the draft cycle. I'm going to go with cornerback Paulson Adebo out of Stanford, the rookie. I think we could reasonably pick any rookie, right? Kawan Baker, Peyton Turner, who you had a phenomenal interview with over at Canal Chronicles. And we should give your guy Dylan Sainer a shout out too. He'll be very interesting to watch in that tight end room to see if he's able to find his way to the roster. Iowa State undrafted free agent sounds familiar. It should. But I'm interested to see Paulson Adebo. As of right now, still no veteran cornerback has been brought in for the New Orleans Saints to join this roster. Mickey Loomis was on WWL radio on Wednesday afternoon and mentioned that they're still interested in potentially pursuing that, but it has to be the right situation because they're kind of strapped at this moment when it comes to the salary cap. And so for me, I'm looking at Paulson Adebo potentially getting a chance to just be competing with guys like Patrick Robinson, PJ Williams, and others. And that's a good opportunity for him. There's also Keith Washington, who I was high on last year. I think that he's somebody that could potentially, he balled out during camp last year. If he can repeat that, that would be really, really good for him and help him make the roster as well. But Paulson Adebo, I'm really interested in seeing, can he bounce back from not being on a football field, playing full speed for almost 2 years by the time the 2021 season starts for New Orleans? And can he claim the starting cornerback 2 role opposite Marshall Lattimore?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for Paulson Adebo. This is one of the guys that I, ever since we've known the draft class, known the UDFAs, this is someone I've been really excited to see on the football field. He's got a lot of traits that I like whenever I go to look at cornerbacks. He's physical. He knows he's athletic. He does what he does, and he's good at it. And I think he's going to contribute really early on in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dylan, this was a ton of fun. We went through our top 3 Thursday here. Each named 3 players that we're excited to see going through training camp. Talk a little bit about your fantastic work over at Canal Chronicles. Tell the folks a little bit about what to expect, if they throw you that follow. Give them a reason to come through at Dilly Sanders on Twitter.
You're going to get some memes. I throw a lot of memes out there. You're going to get a lot of tweets about LSU. I'm a student at LSU. You're going to get a lot of tweets about the Saints, and you're going to get a lot of nonsense, but fun nonsense,
Fun nonsense.
I have been told I've been someone's third favorite Twitter follow.
All right, y'all. One more big thank you and a big shout out to my good friend Dylan Sanders at Dilly Sanders on Twitter. Ton of fun having him here on the show, and we'll be seeing him a bunch over the course of the off season. For tomorrow's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to be joined by Andrew Doak of WWL TV. Going to talk a little bit more about the Saints off season as well. He came through before the draft. Now we're going to talk about the draft and what it means for the Saints heading into training camp. And of course, we'll get you caught up on all of your big stories around the New Orleans Saints and our In Case You Missed It, like we do every Friday. So we have all that coming up for you tomorrow. For today, though, stay locked on today with the Locked On Today podcast. Get all the sports news that you need in less than 20 minutes. As always, y'all, thank you very much for all your support, for rating, reviewing, liking, subscribing, everything that you do to help grow this family. I'm eternally grateful for it. So thank you very much for always showing up for me. And I'll continue to always try to show up for you, especially over on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust to that nation. I'll holla at you.